Is gluten really bad for you? With all the varying opinions and gluten-free options out there, you may find yourself asking this very question. If that's you, then you've come to the right place. I'm here to answer that question during today's video. My answer might just shock you. Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Shockley, Doctor of Cause Chiropractic, board certified in sports medicine, specialized in clinical nutrition. In this video, we're going to go over why gluten has earned itself a bad reputation. There's more to the story than just gut problems. Then we'll discuss that not all gluten is created equally. If you're going to consume it, you want to know this detail. And finally, I will be sharing with you a basic rule of thumb if you really want to keep your health or improve your health as you get older. Let's dive right on in. Why has gluten earned this really bad reputation? Well, this story has so much more to do than just gut symptoms. In fact, there's people that come into my office on a regular basis who have no idea they have issues with gluten because they associate it with only gastrointestinal symptoms. You know, those symptoms that are embarrassing, like the bloating where you look like you're pregnant, or gas, maybe even having issues with diarrhea or constipation, even belching. Those we would associate with some sort of an issue with gluten because we've been taught that that's where that shows up. But here's the thing. When it comes to gluten, we found that it doesn't just have the ability to create these gut types of symptoms and reactions. It has the ability to create a lot of other symptoms you wouldn't even associate with gluten. For example, one thing that we've learned about gluten is it has a high affinity for the brain. So I won't get into the mechanism of how all this happens, but basically your immune's reaction to the gluten that you put in sometimes doesn't just stay in the gut. It goes elsewhere. And we found that it oftentimes ends up in the brain. So if you've been dealing with brain fog, lack of focus and concentration, not feeling like you can remember things, or if you've been dealing with headaches that don't seem to have any known origin or maybe aren't responding to your normal approaches for getting rid of them, it could be an underlying complication of consuming gluten. Or there's also people who maybe they don't necessarily have those types of symptoms as a response of consuming gluten, but they wake up and have aches all throughout their body, aches and pains and tightness, and they just don't feel really good. And again, no real association to potentially consuming gluten. But we also know that gluten has the ability to create reactions in the joints. Ultimately, this substance, if the gut is not working the way that it should be, which about 80% of Americans have guts that are allowing things into our bloodstream, which is then technically in the body, that otherwise have no business being there. Why is that important? Because you don't have to just have a sensitivity or an intolerance or be celiac, with gluten for it to cause these problems. If you have a gut that's not working the right way, which again, you may not have any gut symptoms to show you that that's a problem, then gluten could be getting into the bloodstream and creating all kinds of different immune reactions wherever the immune system chooses to respond. So that could be the brain, and it would be brain health types of symptoms. So the focus, concentration, memory, headaches. It could be in your joints, which would then be the stiffness, the soreness, the achiness that doesn't go away. It could end up cardiovascular. So now maybe you feel like you're having palpitations or, your heart's skipping a beat. Maybe you're having issues with feeling dizzy when you're changing positions. So many types of symptoms can come from consuming this product, regardless on if you're sensitive or not. That is why now, as we're getting further into this whole process and journey with gluten, we're starting to appreciate how bad it actually can be for us when we consume it, especially on a regular basis. So we want to try to reduce the amount of gluten-containing products that we are putting into our body or even on our body. Because if you guys have explored this at all, you've now realized that they put gluten in a lot of really weird places. And part of the reason is because it acts like glue. It's a binder. That's why your bread looks the way that it does, nice and plump. The texture it has, it's all because of the glue from gluten. That means you can also find it in products like ice cream or shampoo. So when you see these labels on products you would never expect gluten to be in, There's a reason for it. Yeah, maybe part of it's because everybody jumped on the bandwagon and wants to be associated with gluten-free, but also because gluten does show up in these really bizarre places that you wouldn't expect it otherwise. So that is why gluten has earned itself this really bad reputation, because it's so detrimental in our health when it gets into the bloodstream and shouldn't be there. Okay? That's the easiest way to think of it. Now, did you know that all of those symptoms can happen to you just as a result of eating gluten? Comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, or if you've experienced any of those symptoms and now might be associating it with gluten. Yep, comment right down below. Now, not all gluten is created equally. What do I mean by that? Have you ever known somebody, or maybe you've experienced this personally, who seems to react to anything and everything here in America that contains gluten, but can travel outside of America, over to Europe, say, maybe to France, and consume all of their gluten-containing amazing baked goods and not react at all? Or same thing down to South Africa. So what in the world, why is that? What's the difference between what is here in America versus what is overseas and outside of this country? Well, there's a few things that we need to talk about for understanding this story and this difference. First of all, in America, the gluten-containing products or grains that we have been altered. Now, there's two camps of thought here when it comes to gluten. The one camp is that we've altered it so much it has way more chromosomes, at its DNA level, if you will, compared to ancient grains. Ancient grains, wheat itself, which is the main source where gluten comes from, okay, only had 12 chromosomes. Now, modern day wheat in the US has 48, and it may even have more since the last time I actually checked that information. So one camp that's against gluten that relates it to all of these additions is that their thought process is, we don't have an enzyme in our body, a digestive enzyme, to recognize what this wheat substance is because it's been changed so much. Now, in theory, if Americans' guts were working the way that they should be, that substance would just get passed out of the body. It wouldn't even be brought into the bloodstream. But as I mentioned, 80% of Americans have guts that are not working properly and allowing substances into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. So now if you have this modern day wheat get into the bloodstream, the immune system is going to be like, aha, invader, and it's going to set off an alert. And as I was mentioning, that alert, that response can happen locally in the gut and you'll have gut symptoms, or it can go to the brain and you'll have brain symptoms. Go to your joints, you'll have joint symptoms, and so on. So that's one side of the anti-gluten camp that's here in the US. The other camp thinks it has a lot more to do with pesticides. Now, if you're not aware, our wheat crops have been Roundup ready, which actually isn't even the right terminology, because that would mean that it would repel the pesticides, which is the Roundup, right? It would repel that instead of absorbing it. It doesn't repel, it totally absorbs. So here's the thing. If a farmer is now planting these crops that have been altered so they don't die as a result of using Roundup or pesticide, then they're able to use a lot more pesticide than what they would otherwise to make sure they kill all of the pests. So our crops now that have been Roundup readied are being exposed to far more pesticide than what they ever have before. So this other side of the camp really believes it's this overexposure to pesticide and us ingesting those pesticides when we consume those products, that's what's creating the reaction. And again, if it gets into the bloodstream, it's not supposed to be there. So the immune system recognizes it as a foreign invader and sets off the alert. Now, who's right? I don't really know. Honestly, I think it has something to do with all of it. And the fact that Americans have guts that are just not healthy the way that they need to be. Okay? So what is this main difference of why people in America that have gluten sensitivities or intolerances? I haven't had any of my celiac patients try this, but I'd be very curious. Why is it that they can't eat gluten-containing products here because they're miserable, yet if they go overseas, they can and they're fine? It's because Europe, South Africa, and maybe many other countries who do not use our wheat, they have a different wheat. It hasn't been modified to be Roundup ready. It hasn't been modified to have all these additional chromosomes. It's an entirely different wheat. So that's the big explanation as to why you could be fine outside of the US. Ultimately, what that might mean is if you are such a sucker for bread, maybe you want to actually find a way to purchase your flour from France, where they use an entirely different wheat than we do, and see how you do with it. That could be an option, okay? Now, before I get into the basic rule of thumb for keeping your health or leveling up your health as you get older, I just want to remind you to click that subscribe button down below and turn those notifications on. I am dropping videos every Monday through Friday that relate to gut health, brain health, all things related to health, and really helping you achieve what I like to call total body mastery. I don't want you to miss any of them. So just remember to click that subscribe button, turn the notifications on, and that way you won't skip a beat. Awesome. So what is this basic rule of thumb for keeping your health or leveling up your health as you get older that I speak of? It's known as macros or ratios. Now, what in the world am I talking about? Because we're talking about gluten, we've been talking about food this whole entire time. There is a lot to what percentages of the macros that we're eating. So macros are your fats, your proteins, and your carbohydrates. What are the right ratios of those macros to consume that sets us up for being healthier as we get older? Let me tell you, majority of Americans have it completely backwards. We were taught back in the 70s that 60% of our calories should be coming from carbohydrate sources, which is what gluten, wheat, and all the gluten containing and the non-gluten containing grains actually are. They're all carbohydrates, right? So now we've been eating them at every single meal. Like that's your easiest grab and go for convenience. It has an amazing shelf life, like all kinds of things. But if you're consuming 60% of your calories coming from carbohydrates and not really doing much from your vegetables and minimal from fruits, then you're setting yourself up for lots of inflammation, which ultimately is the root cause of all disease and illness. And that will put your aging process in fast forward. So from that same time of when our food pyramid was changed back in the 70s, there's been plenty of research to show what ratios do we as humans as a species respond to the best. And they measured all kinds of different details, from hip to waist ratio, your body composition, so body fat percentages, which helps us know if we're healthy or not, right? Blood pressure, your diabetic markers in your blood, inflammatory markers, all the cholesterols. They looked at the human body as a whole, the whole entire, like all organ systems. How does the body respond best? And what they found was that lower carbohydrate diets with high amounts of good fats and moderate amounts of clean proteins is what people responded to the best most often. Now, none of us are exactly identical. I get that. But this is a great starting place if you really want to start leveling up your health. You know, whatever issues you may be dealing with right at this very moment, gluten related or not, this eating approach really will set you up for success and help you preserve your health and also improve your health as you get older. So what do those ratios look like? Well, for good fats, not the bad, because there's a difference, okay? Good fats are like your coconut oil, grass-fed butter, ghee, avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil. You want about 50 to 70% of your diet to be coming from these really healthy, rich, good for you, brain feeding, gut healing, anti-inflammatory fats, okay? Vegetables are a great way to get those in if you have a hard time. This is also your nuts and your seeds too, okay? And avocados. Oh, so much goodness. We eat about half of an avocado every single day. And then when it comes to your proteins, clean proteins, and what that means is that they haven't been adulterated, they haven't been injected with hormones or antibiotics, they're not being fed foods that they would not normally consume if they were let out to pasture on their own, okay? 20 to 30% of what you're consuming should come from these clean protein sources, okay? And then carbohydrates, guys, 20% or less. And the bulk of that percentage should be coming from vegetables. Minimal on fruits because they contain a lot of carbohydrates, okay? Lots of natural occurring sugars. Yes, they've got great nutrient value and different phytonutrients that we need to be healthy, but we really shouldn't be consuming more than about a serving of fruit in a day, okay? Not at every single meal. Vegetables, that should be every single meal and all your snacks with some good protein and fat for satiety, okay? Carbohydrates from grains and other sugars. Sugars should be avoided like the plague, but other grains, keep it really, really minimal. I mean, if you have to have a piece of toast, maybe it's just one, maybe not every other, or not every single day, coming from a healthier option that maybe you got flour from Europe from, okay? So that is your basic rule. 50 to 70% from healthy fats, 20 to 30% from clean proteins, and 20% or less from carbohydrates, predominantly vegetable sources. That eating approach will set you up for so much success as you continue to get older. You will be healthier, you'll have more energy, you'll look better, just more vivacious, and that's what this life is all about, don't you think? Now, if you're sitting there going, what on earth am I supposed to eat, especially as it relates to gluten, or now you got rid of gluten-free options as well because they're grains and they can be stressful for the body. Don't waste another moment on that thought. Look down in the description right below this video. Click on the see more so that you can actually expand it out, and look for my 7-day gut repair meal program. Now, this meal program, it's totally free and it lays it all out for you. I designed this meal plan with busy people in mind, or people who really just don't like to cook, but you really should be. We don't need to cook every single day, every single meal. Like, that is unheard of. That doesn't work. Most people don't have time for that. So this meal plan is created with planned overs. So you're not cooking every single day and you're not living life in the kitchen. I've also included for you your grocery list so that you don't even have to think, it's just there. And then I always use recipes that have minimal ingredients and don't take an exorbitant amount of time to actually prepare. So just go to that description down below, find the 7-day gut repair meal program, click on that, and that will show you exactly what you should be doing to get healthier as you get older. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here on today's video. Have an amazing rest of your day.